the rusted steel skeleton of a Midwest security transport vehicle, buried beneath 30 years of secrets and mud, holding over $50 million in unmarked bills and gold bullion from the infamous Madison County Bank heist, a robbery that had haunted the FBI's unsolved case files for 3 decades. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The unforgiving winter of 2023 will forever be etched in my memory as the season that nearly destroyed everything my family had struggled to build. Across 4 generations of backbreaking work and unwavering determination. With our ranch just 48 hours away from bank foreclosure and our 97-year legacy hanging by the thinnest thread, the hardened earth beneath our forgotten stone quarry held a secret that would transform our desperate circumstances into a salvation none of us could have imagined. My name is Samuel Blackwood, and I'm the 4th generation owner of Whispering Pines Ranch, nestled in the rolling hills of western Montana, 23 miles outside the small town of Riverstone. My great-grandfather, Thomas Blackwood, established our ranch in the bitter winter of 1926 during an era when most Montana ranchers were abandoning their homesteads, not staking new claims in one of America's most unforgiving agricultural landscapes. Thomas arrived in Montana with nothing but a weathered leather satchel, an iron will, and $17 to his name after losing his factory job and life savings in the economic downturn that preceded the Great Depression. While countless displaced families migrated to urban centers seeking industrial work, Thomas made the extraordinary decision to travel westward into the wilderness, convinced that open Montana land held possibilities that crowded cities could never provide. Our 580-acre ranch had weathered every possible disaster the Montana wilderness could unleash: flash floods that washed away entire sections of fencing, economic recessions that bankrupted neighboring properties, drought seasons that turned pastures to dust, and blizzards so fierce they isolated us from civilization for weeks at a time. For nearly a century, Whispering Pines Ranch had been more than just a cattle operation. It had been our family's anchor in an unpredictable world, living proof that determination and resourcefulness could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. But nothing in our family's long history of perseverance had prepared us for the devastating series of events that struck Whispering Pines during the winter of 2023. Multiple catastrophes aligned in perfect, terrible synchronicity, threatening to destroy in a single season what 4 generations of Blackwoods had spent nearly a century building through their blood, sweat, and unyielding commitment to this remote piece of Montana wilderness. What I'm about to share with you is the absolutely true account of how my desperate attempt to save our dying livestock by draining an abandoned quarry led to the discovery of one of the most valuable hidden treasures in American criminal history. This isn't just a story about finding money. It's about uncovering family secrets buried for generations, solving a mystery that had confounded law enforcement for decades, and learning that sometimes our salvation lies hidden in the places we least expect to look. The stone quarry that had been nothing but a maintenance headache and liability for our family would soon reveal that it had been guarding our redemption all along, waiting silently beneath tons of rock and years of accumulated silt for the moment when we would be desperate enough to look deeper than anyone had ever ventured before. Thomas Blackwood's story began with adversity, but was forged in the kind of resilience that would define our family for generations. He had been working as a factory foreman in Chicago when the economic troubles of 1925 cost him both his job and his modest savings. Unlike thousands of unemployed workers who remained in urban areas hoping for factory jobs to return, Thomas made a decision that seemed completely irrational to everyone who knew him. He used his final $17 to purchase a train ticket to Helena, Montana, convinced that the expanding American frontier offered opportunities for independent men that cities could never provide. He had heard stories of homesteaders who were successfully claiming land under the revised Homestead Act, and he was determined to join their ranks despite having no agricultural experience whatsoever. The Montana that Thomas discovered in 1926 was a harsh, unforgiving landscape, but it was also a place where a man with nothing but determination could potentially build something lasting. After spending 2 weeks working as a logger to earn enough for basic supplies, Thomas learned about available homestead land in the remote hills west of Helena. Most experienced farmers dismissed these rocky parcels as too challenging for successful agriculture, but Thomas saw opportunity where others recognized only obstacles. The 580 acres that Thomas claimed in November 1926 were considered nearly worthless by local standards. Located on rocky terrain with poor soil quality and subject to extreme temperature fluctuations that regularly dropped below -40 degrees Fahrenheit during winter months. The land had been passed over by dozens of more experienced homesteaders who understood the harsh realities of Montana ranching. But Thomas recognized advantages that less desperate settlers had overlooked. The property included a year-round spring that never completely froze, providing reliable water even during the harshest winters. The varied elevation offered natural shelter for livestock during severe weather. Most importantly, the remote location meant the land was priced at a level that a man with almost nothing could eventually afford to own outright. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Thomas's first winter on the homestead nearly killed him. Living in a hastily constructed cabin made from local pine and heated by a stone fireplace he built himself, he survived on preserved beans, wild game hunted with a second-hand rifle, and an unshakable belief that spring would bring opportunities to transform his rocky homestead into a productive ranch. When spring finally arrived in April 1927, Thomas began the backbreaking work of clearing stones, improving soil, and establishing the foundations of what would eventually become Whispering Pines Ranch. His first livestock consisted of 3 chickens and a milk cow purchased from a neighboring homesteader who was abandoning his claim. But Thomas had already begun planning for the cattle operation that would eventually form the heart of our family's livelihood. The key to Thomas's early survival was his recognition that traditional farming approaches would never succeed on his challenging property. Instead, he focused on developing innovative ranching techniques specifically adapted to the harsh Montana environment. He created stone windbreaks that protected livestock from bitter winter winds, developed water conservation systems that maximized the value of his natural spring, and established relationships with meat buyers in Helena who were willing to pay premium prices for the leaner, more flavorful beef that his free-range cattle produced. By 1930, Thomas had expanded his operation to include 25 head of cattle, a small but productive hay operation, and the beginnings of what would become Montana's first guest ranch, catering to wealthy Easterners seeking authentic frontier experiences. He also began the construction project that would define Whispering Pines Ranch for generations to come, the expansion of a natural stone quarry that would serve both as a source of building materials and as a crucial water storage system for his growing agricultural operation. Thomas's quarry project was more ambitious than anything most homesteaders would have attempted. The natural limestone depression on his property had caught his attention during his first spring, when snowmelt created a temporary pond that took weeks to drain. Thomas realized that with proper excavation and stonework, this natural formation could be transformed into a permanent reservoir capable of storing thousands of gallons of water for use during dry periods and winter months when surface water sources became unreliable. Working primarily during winter months when other ranch activities were reduced, Thomas spent 4 years expanding the natural quarry using hand tools, dynamite purchased from a Helena mining supply company, and an ingenious pulley system he designed himself to move heavy stones into precise positions. The finished quarry was a masterpiece of practical engineering 40 feet deep at its center, lined with carefully fitted stone walls, and designed to capture and store water from the seasonal streams that flowed through his property during spring. Snowmelt. Thomas's quarry served multiple essential functions that made Whispering Pines Ranch far more resilient than other operations in the region. It provided unlimited building stone for ranch improvements, created a reliable water source that never completely froze, even during the harshest winters, offered a safe swimming area during the brief summer months, and served as an emergency shelter during the violent thunderstorms that occasionally swept through the Montana hills. But most importantly, the quarry represented Thomas's philosophy that successful homesteading required thinking decades into the future rather than simply surviving from one season to the next. Every improvement he made to the ranch was designed to benefit not just his own immediate needs, but the children and grandchildren he hoped would continue building upon the foundation he was establishing in the Montana wilderness. Thomas's personal life remained focused entirely on ranch development until 1932, when he married Sarah McAllister, a schoolteacher from Riverstone who had been impressed by his determination and self-taught engineering skills. Sarah brought education and refinement to complement Thomas's practical know-how, and their partnership created the perfect balance of skills needed to transform a struggling homestead into a sustainable ranch operation. Sarah established the ranch's first formal accounting system, developed correspondence relationships with agricultural extension services to access the latest farming research, and created the educational foundation that would prepare future generations of Blackwoods to manage the ranch with both practical skills and scientific knowledge. Thomas and Sarah's first child, my grandfather Robert Blackwood, was born in 1934 during one of Montana's worst drought years. Robert grew up understanding that every aspect of ranch life required innovation, determination, and the ability to find creative solutions to unprecedented problems. He learned to ride horses before he could walk confidently, could repair basic machinery by age 10, and possessed an intuitive understanding of weather patterns that impressed even experienced local ranchers. Robert's contribution to Whispering Pines Ranch centered on modernization and mechanization during the post-war economic boom of the 1950s. He recognized that relying exclusively on traditional ranching methods would leave the operation vulnerable to labor shortages and increasing competition from larger, more mechanized operations. Under Robert's leadership, the ranch acquired its first tractor, established more efficient irrigation systems, and began implementing selective breeding programs that improved the quality and market value of the ranch's cattle. Robert married Elizabeth Thornton in 1956, combining his ranching expertise with her business education and marketing skills. Together, they expanded the ranch's guest operations, attracting wealthy visitors from coastal cities who were willing to pay premium prices for authentic Montana ranch experiences. Their son, my father James Blackwood, was born in 1958 and grew up during a period when Whispering Pines Ranch was transitioning from a traditional cattle operation into a more diversified agricultural and tourism enterprise. James learned not just ranching skills, but also business management, marketing, and customer service techniques that would prove essential for the ranch's continued success during changing economic conditions. James's primary contribution to the ranch involved technological integration and market expansion during the 1980s and 1990s. He implemented computerized record-keeping systems, developed direct marketing relationships with premium restaurants interested in naturally raised beef, and established Whispering Pines Ranch's reputation for environmental stewardship and sustainable agricultural practices. James married my mother, Margaret Collins, in 1988, bringing together his ranching background with her expertise in environmental science and conservation biology. Their partnership enabled the ranch to develop innovative grazing management systems, habitat conservation programs, and watershed protection initiatives that enhanced both productivity and environmental quality. I was born Samuel Blackwood in 1990, carrying forward the tradition of the family name and our deep connection to the Montana landscape that had shaped our identity for nearly a century. Growing up on Whispering Pines Ranch meant understanding, from an early age, that I was part of something much larger than myself, a continuing story that had begun with Thomas's desperate gamble in 1926 and had grown into one of Montana's most respected family ranching operations. My childhood was spent learning every aspect of ranch operations, from cattle management and hay production to guest services and equipment maintenance. By the time I was 18, I could operate every piece of machinery on the ranch, handle basic veterinary procedures, coordinate multi-day guest expeditions, and manage the marketing and reservation systems that kept our tourism operation running smoothly throughout the year. When I inherited primary responsibility for Whispering Pines Ranch in 2018, following my father's partial retirement due to health issues, I was 28 years old and possessed more practical ranch management experience than many people twice my age. But I also inherited challenges that no previous generation had faced: climate change affecting traditional weather patterns, increased competition from corporate ranching operations, regulatory requirements that added substantial costs to our operations, and economic uncertainty that made long-term planning increasingly difficult. The ranch I inherited was operating successfully, but with increasingly narrow profit margins. Our cattle operation was producing high-quality, grass-fed beef that commanded premium prices from specialty markets throughout the region. Our guest ranch services attracted visitors seeking authentic Montana experiences combined with comfortable accommodations and expert guides. Most importantly, Whispering Pines Ranch had earned recognition for sustainable ranching practices, with our innovative techniques being studied and implemented by other ranchers throughout the Northern Rockies. We employed 8 full-time staff members and provided seasonal work for another 15 people from surrounding communities, making us one of the most significant employers in our isolated rural region. But beneath this surface success, I was facing challenges that threatened everything my family had built over nearly a century of continuous struggle and achievement. The stone quarry that had been the foundation of Thomas's water management system had developed serious structural problems that were becoming increasingly expensive to maintain and potentially dangerous to our operations and guest safety. The quarry's walls, after nearly a century of freeze-thaw cycles and shifting ground, was showing signs of instability that concerned our insurance company and worried our engineers. Repairing the quarry properly would require specialized equipment, expert stonework, and expenses that could easily exceed $175,000, money that our ranch's current financial position couldn't support without taking on debt that would compromise our independence and operational flexibility. More troubling was the discovery that the quarry was no longer holding water effectively. Cracks in the stone foundation were allowing stored water to seep into underground channels, reducing our water storage capacity, just as climate change was making reliable water sources more critical than ever for both our livestock and guest operations. The quarry that had provided resilience and security for 3 generations of our family was becoming a liability that threatened to destroy everything Thomas had started with his $17 and unshakable determination to succeed in the Montana wilderness. As I stood at the edge of that troubled quarry during the bitter winter of 2023, facing the greatest crisis our family had ever encountered, I could never have imagined that Thomas's greatest engineering achievement was about to become the source of our salvation in ways that would exceed even his ambitious dreams for Whispering Pines Ranch's future. The story of Whispering Pines Ranch truly begins not with Thomas's arrival in Montana, but with the extraordinary circumstances that forced a Chicago factory Foreman to risk everything on an impossible dream in the American wilderness. To understand how a stone quarry could hide secrets worth $50 million, you need to understand the kind of man who would spend 4 years moving tons of rock by hand to build something that would last for generations. Thomas Andrew Blackwood was born in 1895 in Pittsburgh during America's Industrial Revolution. His father, William Blackwood, worked in the steel mills that transformed Pittsburgh into America's industrial heartland. His mother, Catherine O'Brien Blackwood, came from Irish immigrants who had fled the potato famine 2 generations earlier. The America of Thomas's childhood was a country of stark contrasts: immense wealth for industrial barons and grinding poverty for the workers who powered their factories. Thomas learned mechanical skills from his father while developing the keen intelligence and work ethic that would later enable him to transform barren Montana hillsides into productive ranchland. William recognized his son's exceptional abilities and sacrificed to provide Thomas with educational opportunities that might lift him above the grinding factory life that had worn his own body down before age 40. Thomas's decision to relocate to Montana was precipitated by tragedy rather than opportunity. In 1925, a severe economic downturn swept through America's industrial centers, causing factory closures and mass layoffs that devastated working families. The Chicago manufacturing plant where Thomas had risen to foreman closed with no warning, leaving him unemployed with limited savings and no prospects in a city filled with desperate men competing for vanishing jobs. Unlike thousands who clung to urban areas hoping for economic recovery, Thomas saw the industrial collapse as a sign that true security could never come from depending on wages paid by faceless corporations that could disappear overnight. His journey to Montana was not an escape, but a deliberate strategy to create independence and self-sufficiency that no economic crisis could destroy. The Montana Thomas discovered in 1926 was simultaneously beautiful and brutal, a landscape that promised freedom but demanded incredible sacrifice in return. During his initial weeks in Helena, Thomas absorbed everything he could about ranching, talking with experienced cattlemen, studying agricultural bulletins, and working alongside seasoned ranch hands who shared practical knowledge that no book could provide. The specific 580-acre parcel that Thomas claimed had been rejected by 17 previous potential homesteaders who recognized that successful ranching on such marginal land would require resources, skills, and determination that few possessed. The property was located in a remote area, accessible only by a crude wagon trail that became impassable during winter months. But Thomas saw advantages in this isolation that more conventional settlers had overlooked. The property's varied elevation created natural microclimates that could support different types of vegetation and provide shelter for livestock during extreme weather. The year-round spring provided water security that flat river valley properties couldn't match. The varied terrain would support diverse wildlife, providing additional food sources during difficult times. Thomas's first winter alone on the homestead became family legend, a story of survival against odds that would later inspire 4 generations of Blackwoods to persevere through their own challenges. His hastily constructed cabin, built using techniques learned from other homesteaders, provided basic shelter but little comfort during nights when temperatures plunged below -40 degrees Fahrenheit and wind howled through gaps in the rough-hewn walls. Food supplies had to last from October through April, since winter travel to town was impossible through deep snowdrifts. Thomas survived on carefully rationed beans, flour, coffee, and wild game he hunted during brief breaks in the winter storms. He supplemented this diet with knowledge gained from local Native Americans about edible winter plants that could prevent scurvy and provide essential nutrients when fresh food was unavailable. But Thomas's greatest challenge wasn't physical survival. It was maintaining the psychological strength necessary to continue working toward long-term goals. while enduring months of isolation, uncertainty, and constant physical discomfort. Many homesteaders abandoned their claims during their first winter, overwhelmed by the gap between their dreams and the harsh realities of frontier life. Thomas survived by focusing on detailed planning for improvements he would implement during the brief summer season. He spent winter evenings sketching designs for livestock shelters, water systems, and agricultural layouts that would maximize the productivity of his challenging property. He studied every piece of information he could find about successful ranching techniques, learning from the experiences of others who had succeeded in similar environments. When spring finally arrived in April 1927, Thomas began the systematic development work that would transform raw wilderness into Whispering Pines Ranch. His first priority was establishing a reliable water storage system that could capture the abundant spring runoff for use during the dry summer months and harsh winter periods, when surface water sources became unreliable. The natural stone depression that would become Thomas's famous quarry caught his attention during his first week of spring ranch work. Snowmelt had created a temporary pond approximately 50 feet across and 12 feet deep that persisted for nearly a month before slowly draining through underground channels. Thomas realized that with proper excavation and engineering, this natural formation could be transformed into a permanent reservoir capable of storing thousands of gallons of water for year-round ranch use. Thomas's quarry project represented the most ambitious construction undertaking attempted by any homesteader in his region of Montana. Working primarily with hand tools supplemented by dynamite he purchased from the Helena Mining Supply Company, Thomas spent 4 full years expanding the natural depression into an engineered water storage system that would serve Whispering Pines Ranch for more than 9 decades. The physical challenges of quarry construction were staggering. Thomas had to move thousands of tons of stone by hand using a pulley and lever system he designed based on his factory engineering experience. Each stone had to be individually shaped to fit perfectly with its neighbors, creating waterproof walls that could withstand decades of freeze-thaw cycles without structural failure. Thomas's quarry design incorporated sophisticated features that reflected his understanding of Montana's extreme weather conditions and his determination to build something that would provide value for generations. The quarry was excavated to a maximum depth of 40 feet at its center, ensuring that even during the worst drought years, the deepest water would remain accessible for livestock and emergency use. The stone walls were constructed in a stepped pattern that prevented erosion during heavy spring runoff while providing safe access points for both humans and animals. Thomas also incorporated overflow channels that would prevent damage during years of exceptionally heavy snowmelt, protecting both the quarry structure and downstream areas of his property from flood damage. Thomas's most innovative feature was a filtration system built into the quarry's foundation. He arranged layers of gravel, sand, and stone fragments to create natural water purification that would maintain water quality even when the quarry was receiving runoff from large areas of his property. This filtration system would prove crucial decades later when Whispering Pines Ranch's guest operation required reliable sources of high-quality water for cooking, drinking, and bathing facilities. The economic challenges Thomas faced during quarry construction were as demanding as the physical requirements. Dynamite, specialized tools, and construction materials had to be transported by wagon over mountain trails that were barely passable during good weather and completely impassable during winter months. Every purchase required careful budgeting since Thomas was supporting himself entirely through subsistence agriculture and occasional work for neighboring ranches. Thomas financed his quarry construction by developing multiple income sources that took advantage of his unique combination of skills and his property's strategic location. He established a small blacksmith operation that served other homesteaders throughout the region, repairing tools and equipment that were essential for survival in the harsh Montana environment. His mechanical expertise was particularly valuable. During winter months, when equipment failures could mean the difference between survival and disaster for isolated homesteaders. Thomas also began developing the tourism potential of his spectacular property years before other Montana ranchers recognized the economic opportunities presented by wealthy Eastern visitors seeking authentic frontier experiences. He offered hunting guide services for Helena businessmen who wanted access to the pristine wildlife habitat surrounding his ranch, and he provided basic accommodation for travelers who needed overnight shelter while traveling through the region. By 1932, Thomas's diverse income sources were generating enough revenue to support not just his basic survival needs, but continued expansion of his ranch infrastructure and livestock operations. He had acquired his first significant cattle herd, 25 head of hardy Montana breeds, purchased from other successful ranchers, and had established hay production systems that could provide adequate feed for his animals throughout the harsh winter months. Thomas's marriage to Sarah McAllister in 1932 represented not just personal happiness, but a strategic partnership that brought complementary skills to Whispering Pines Ranch. Sarah had been teaching at the one-room schoolhouse in Riverstone when she first met Thomas during a community gathering. Unlike many educated women who viewed ranch life as too difficult and isolating, Sarah recognized the potential in both Thomas and the ranch he was building. She saw beyond the rough edges of a frontier homestead to envision the thriving operation it could become with proper management and planning. Sarah's education and organizational skills transformed Whispering Pines Ranch's business operations. She established formal accounting systems, maintained correspondence with agricultural extension services to access the latest research, and developed marketing strategies that connected the ranch's products with premium markets in Helena and beyond. Most importantly, Sarah established the educational foundation that would prepare future generations of Blackwoods to manage the ranch. With both practical skills and scientific knowledge, she created a family library filled with books on agriculture, animal husbandry, and business management that would guide ranch decisions for decades to come. Robert Lightning Blackwood, Thomas and Sarah's first child, was born in 1934 during one of Montana's worst drought years. The timing seemed symbolic of the challenges Robert would face throughout his life. Born during environmental adversity, yet destined to thrive through innovation and determination. Robert grew up immersed in every aspect of ranch operations, learning both practical skills from Thomas and academic knowledge from Sarah. By age 12, he could manage cattle operations independently, repair complex equipment, and make sound decisions about resource allocation during crisis situations. His education combined homeschooling with periodic attendance at the Riverstone school, creating a unique blend of practical and theoretical knowledge that would serve him well throughout his ranch management career. Robert's contribution to Whispering Pines Ranch centered on modernization and mechanization. During the post-war economic boom of the 1950s, he recognized that relying exclusively on traditional ranching methods would leave the operation vulnerable to labor shortages and increasing competition from larger, more mechanized operations. Under Robert's leadership, the ranch acquired its first tractor in 1953, replacing horse-drawn equipment with machinery that could accomplish in hours what previously required days of backbreaking labor. The increased efficiency allowed expansion of both cattle operations and hay production while reducing the physical toll on ranch workers. Robert also implemented a comprehensive breeding program that improved the quality and market value of the ranch's cattle. By carefully selecting bulls with superior genetics and maintaining detailed records of herd performance, Robert transformed Whispering Pines Ranch's cattle from average quality to premium stock that commanded higher prices and attracted buyers from throughout the region. Robert's marriage to Elizabeth Thornton in 1956 brought additional business expertise to the ranch operation. Elizabeth had studied business administration at the University of Montana, and she applied modern management principles to the ranch's increasingly complex operations. Her marketing expertise enabled the ranch to develop direct relationships with premium restaurants and specialty meat markets that paid top prices for the high-quality beef produced through Robert's breeding program. Elizabeth also expanded the guest ranch operation that Thomas had begun in the 1930s, transforming it from basic accommodation into a premium destination that attracted wealthy visitors from eastern cities. The guest operation generated substantial revenue during summer months when cattle operations required less attention, creating a year-round income stream that reduced the ranch's vulnerability to cattle market fluctuations. James Thomas Blackwood, Robert and Elizabeth's son, was born in 1958 during a period of transition for both Whispering Pines Ranch and American agriculture generally. The ranch was evolving from a traditional cattle operation into a more diversified agricultural and tourism enterprise, while the broader agricultural industry was experiencing increased mechanization, corporate consolidation, and market volatility. James grew up understanding that successful ranch management required not just traditional agricultural knowledge, but sophisticated business skills, marketing expertise, and technological proficiency. His education reflected this broader perspective, combining practical ranch experience with formal study of agricultural science, business management, and emerging computer technologies. James's primary contribution to Whispering Pines Ranch involved technological integration and market expansion during the 1980s and 1990s. He implemented the ranch's first computerized record-keeping systems, replacing the handwritten ledgers that had served previous generations with databases that could track individual animal performance, financial transactions, and market trends with unprecedented accuracy and efficiency. James also expanded the ranch's market reach, developing direct relationships with premium restaurants and specialty food distributors interested in naturally raised Montana beef. These direct marketing relationships eliminated middlemen and enabled the ranch to capture a larger share of the consumer dollar, significantly improving profitability despite increasing production costs. James's marriage to Margaret Collins in 1988 brought environmental science expertise to complement the ranch's growing focus on sustainable agricultural practices. Margaret had studied conservation biology at Montana State University, and she applied scientific principles to the ranch's land management strategies, developing innovative grazing systems that improved both productivity and environmental quality. Margaret established Whispering Pines Ranch's first formal conservation program, working with state wildlife officials and university researchers to document and enhance the biodiversity of the ranch's varied ecosystems. These conservation initiatives not only improved the ecological health of the property, but also created marketing advantages as consumers became increasingly interested in environmentally responsible food production. I was born in 1990 into a ranch operation that had evolved dramatically from the desperate homestead gamble Thomas had taken in 1926. Whispering Pines Ranch had become one of Montana's most respected family operations, known for quality beef production, authentic guest experiences, and innovative environmental practices that balanced productivity with conservation. My childhood education reflected the accumulated wisdom of 4 generations of Blackwoods who understood that successful ranching required a unique combination of practical skills, scientific knowledge, business acumen, and environmental stewardship. By the time I graduated from Montana State University with degrees in ranch management and business administration, one possessed both the theoretical foundation and practical experience needed to guide Whispering Pines Ranch through the increasingly complex challenges of 21st century agriculture. When I assumed primary management responsibility for the ranch in 2018, I inherited both a successful operation and unprecedented challenges. Climate change was altering traditional weather patterns. Extended droughts were becoming more common. Regulatory requirements were increasing operational costs. And corporate consolidation was reshaping agricultural markets in ways that threatened family-scale operations throughout the American West. The winter of 2023 brought these challenges to a crisis point through a devastating series of events that nearly destroyed everything my family had built over nearly a century. An extended drought had already stressed our water resources and reduced hay production when an early winter storm killed 30 head of cattle and damaged critical infrastructure throughout the ranch. Repair costs depleted our financial reserves. Just as a banking crisis triggered calls on outstanding loans and eliminated emergency credit options that might have carried us through to spring. By February 2023, Whispering Pines Ranch faced imminent foreclosure, with bank representatives making it clear that we had less than 60 days to make payments or lose the property that had defined our family's identity for 4 generations. The quarry that Thomas had built with such determination and sacrifice had become our greatest liability, losing water through growing cracks, threatening structural collapse, and requiring repairs we could no longer afford. As I stood at the edge of that troubled quarry during the bitter Montana winter, I made the desperate decision that would change everything to drain the quarry completely, attempt emergency repairs using our own labor and limited resources, and pray that we could restore water storage capacity before spring calving season when our cattle would need reliable water sources. The decision to drain Thomas's quarry completely came during a desperate family meeting on February 12th, when our water loss had accelerated to over 4,000 gallons daily and local engineers warned that catastrophic structural failure was imminent. Rather than watching 9 decades of family legacy slowly drain away while we waited for financial assistance that would never arrive, we decided to empty the quarry completely and attempt repairs ourselves using techniques I had learned during my ranch management courses. The draining process took 3 full weeks using every pump we could borrow from neighboring ranches. The February temperatures hovered around 0, transforming the quarry water into a slushy mixture that froze solid each night and had to be broken apart each morning before pumping could resume. My brother-in-law Mark and I worked 18-hour days in shifts, fighting frostbite and exhaustion as we slowly emptied the historic reservoir that had sustained our family for generations. As the water level dropped, we could see the extent of the structural damage more clearly. Decades of freeze-thaw cycles had created fractures throughout the quarry's lower sections, allowing water to escape through channels that hadn't existed during Thomas's time. But we also began noticing something unusual about the quarry's bottom section that had never been visible during more than 90 years of continuous use. At the deepest point of the quarry, approximately 35 feet below the rim, the stone floor showed clear evidence of human activity that had nothing to do with Thomas's original construction work. Regular geometric patterns in the stone suggested that something substantial had been deliberately placed at the bottom of the quarry, and then carefully covered with precisely arranged stones that matched the surrounding walls. When the quarry was finally empty on March 5, 2023, we could clearly see the outline of a large rectangular object embedded in the stone floor. The dimensions were approximately 20 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 10 feet high, far too large and geometrically precise to be a natural rock formation. My ranch management training included ground-penetrating radar techniques for locating underground water sources, and we still had access to the equipment from a previous route management project. The radar images revealed that the buried object was definitely artificial and appeared to be metallic with hollow interior spaces. The radar signature suggested a large vehicle or container that had been deliberately concealed beneath tons of stone and left undisturbed for decades. Our initial reaction combined confusion with tentative hope. Whatever was buried in our quarry represented a mystery that might somehow connect to our family's salvation if we could uncover it before the bank took our land. The excavation began on March 7th, using the ranch's aging backhoe and every available hand tool. Working carefully to avoid damaging whatever lay beneath, we systematically removed the stone slabs that had concealed the buried object. The work was painstaking and physically exhausting, made more difficult by the continuing winter conditions and our awareness that bank representatives could arrive any day to initiate foreclosure proceedings. After 3 days of continuous excavation, we uncovered the first definitive evidence of what lay beneath the distinctive curved roof of an armored transport vehicle. Its once black paint now faded to a dull gray, but still clearly recognizable. Despite decades of burial, the vehicle was positioned as if it had been deliberately driven into the empty quarry, and then carefully covered with stone to prevent detection. By March 11th, we had exposed enough of the vehicle to confirm that it was a Midwest Security Transport armored car, a model used primarily for high-value shipments between 1980 and 1995. The vehicle appeared remarkably well preserved, protected from moisture and extreme temperature fluctuations by the careful stone enclosure that had been built around it. The most shocking discovery came when we finally cleared enough stone to reveal the vehicle's license plate and side markings. This wasn't just any armored transport, it was the notorious ghost truck that had disappeared without a trace during the Madison County Bank robbery of 1991, one of the most infamous unsolved heists in American criminal history. According to news reports from that era, the Madison County Bank's main vault had been emptied of over $22 million in cash and gold bullion during a precisely executed weekend robbery. The stolen assets had been loaded into a Midwest Security transport vehicle that the robbers had somehow acquired, and the entire operation had been executed with such professional precision that investigators suspected inside involvement from both bank and security company employees. Despite one of the largest manhunts in Montana history, the robbers, the transport vehicle, and the stolen assets had vanished completely, leading to decades of speculation, unsolved case files, and occasional claimed sightings that always proved false. Now, 32 years later, the missing vehicle was emerging from its stone tomb in our family quarry, raising disturbing questions about our own history and potentially holding the answer to our financial salvation. The discovery of what appeared to be a buried armored car led to frantic research into historical records that might explain how such a massive object had ended up at the bottom of our family's quarry. The breakthrough came when Mark found archived newspaper articles about the Madison County Bank robbery, including detailed descriptions of the missing armored vehicle and its contents. According to the FBI files that had been partially declassified in 2015, the missing armored transport had been carrying approximately $16.8 million in cash and $5.3 million in gold bullion when it disappeared. On April 12, 1991, the vehicle and its contents had never been recovered, and most investigators had eventually concluded that the robbers had probably disassembled the vehicle, melted down the gold, and gradually laundered the cash through offshore accounts. The discovery raised troubling questions about our family's potential involvement in one of Montana's most notorious crimes. My grandfather Robert would have been managing the ranch in 1991, with my father James working alongside him as a young man of 33. Could members of my own family have been involved in concealing the stolen vehicle and its valuable contents? The possibility seemed both unthinkable and increasingly difficult to dismiss as we continued excavating the buried transport. By March 14th, we had exposed the entire armored vehicle, revealing that it had been carefully positioned in the deepest part of the quarry and then methodically encased in a stone chamber that protected it from water damage and discovery. The level of planning and effort involved in the concealment operation suggested that this was not a hasty hiding job, but a carefully orchestrated, long-term storage solution. The vehicle's rear doors remained sealed with the original security locks, apparently undisturbed since the day the transport disappeared. The cab section showed signs of professional modification, with the original security company markings partially obscured and the driver's compartment adapted for civilian use. Most significantly, the vehicle's VIN plates and other identifying markers had been carefully preserved rather than removed or altered, suggesting that whoever concealed the transport wanted it to remain identifiable if ever discovered. The decision to contact law enforcement came after a sleepless night of family discussion about legal, ethical, and practical considerations. While we desperately needed financial resources to save our ranch, none of us could contemplate keeping stolen property or concealing evidence in a criminal investigation. More practically, there would be no legal way to explain or utilize any assets recovered from the vehicle without attracting immediate attention from authorities. On March 15th, I placed a call to Sheriff Daniel Martinez, a third-generation law enforcement officer whose grandfather had actually participated in the original investigation of the Madison County Bank robbery. Within hours, our quarry was transformed from a quiet family crisis into the center of a major law enforcement operation involving county deputies, state police, and FBI agents specialized in cold case investigations and evidence recovery. The opening of the armored transport took place on March 17th under the supervision of FBI Special Agent Catherine Reynolds, who had specialized in financial crimes and asset recovery throughout her 20-year career. Using specialized tools designed for accessing secured vehicles without destroying potential evidence, the FBI team carefully breached the rear doors of the transport while recording every step of the process for future legal proceedings. The contents of the transport exceeded even the expectations created by the historical records. The cargo area contained 121 sealed canvas bags of cash in various denominations, primarily hundreds and fifties, totaling approximately $18.2 million. In 1991 currency, the gold section held 212 bars of varying weights, along with sealed containers of collectible gold coins that had been part of the bank's private client storage service. But the most surprising discovery wasn't the stolen assets, it was the documentation found in a waterproof case secured to the inside wall of the transport. The case contained detailed records of the robbery operation, including names of participants, division of assets, and most significantly, a personal journal that revealed the full story of how the armored transport had ended up buried in our family quarry. The journal belonged to Michael Blackwood, my grandfather Robert's younger brother, who had left Montana in 1978 following a bitter family dispute over ranch management and inheritance rights. According to family stories, Michael had moved to California and lost touch with the family entirely, eventually dying in a car accident in 1995. The journal revealed a very different narrative, one that would reshape our understanding of our family history while potentially saving Whispering Pines Ranch from foreclosure. According to Michael's detailed account, he had been recruited into a sophisticated criminal organization during his time in San Francisco, eventually becoming involved in planning high-value robberies throughout the western United States. The Madison County Bank job had been his masterpiece, a meticulously planned operation that exploited his intimate knowledge of Montana's rural banking systems and transportation networks. The most shocking revelation was that Michael had specifically chosen our family quarry as the perfect hiding place for the stolen assets, knowing that its remote location, family ownership, and unique construction made it ideal for long-term concealment. Michael's journal explained that he had returned to the ranch secretly during a 2-week period when Robert and his family were away at a national agricultural conference, using his childhood knowledge of the property to access the quarry without detection. Working with 2 trusted associates, Michael had drained the quarry partially, driven the transport vehicle into the deepest section, and then carefully built a stone chamber around it that would protect the contents while blending perfectly with Thomas's original construction. Once the concealment was complete, Michael had allowed the quarry to refill naturally, leaving no visible evidence of the treasure it now contained. The most troubling aspect of Michael's account was his explanation for why he had chosen our family property. The journal revealed decades of resentment over what Michael perceived as unfair treatment in the family inheritance, with his older brother Robert receiving primary responsibility for the ranch, while Michael was expected to pursue opportunities elsewhere. The decision to hide the stolen assets on family property represented both practical criminal strategy and a twisted form of psychological revenge, secretly using his family's land for illegal purposes while they remained completely unaware. Michael's journal also explained why the stolen assets had never been retrieved. Following the robbery, intense law enforcement scrutiny had made it impossible to access the quarry without risking discovery. Michael had planned to wait at least 5 years before returning to recover the assets, but his criminal activities had resulted in his arrest on unrelated charges in 1994, leading to a prison sentence that ended with his death from health complications. In 2003, the journal concluded with what appeared to be a message specifically intended for future discovery. Michael had apparently anticipated that the transport might eventually be found during quarry maintenance or renovation, and he had left detailed instructions about the legal status of the stolen assets and recommendations for how they should be handled if discovered by family members. According to Michael's research, which was later confirmed by FBI legal experts, stolen assets that remain unclaimed for a statutory period can sometimes be subject to finder's rights under specific circumstances, particularly when the original owners have received insurance compensation and relinquished claims to recovered property. Michael had specifically structured the robbery to maximize the possibility that any eventual discovery might legally benefit whoever found the hidden transport. The legal resolution of our discovery took 4 months of complex negotiations between federal agencies, state officials, insurance companies, and our legal representatives. Under Montana state law and federal asset recovery regulations, Whispering Pines Ranch was eventually awarded a finder's fee amounting to 35% of the recovered assets, with the remainder being returned to insurance companies that had compensated the original victims of the robbery. Our portion of the recovery was valued at approximately $17.5 million after accounting for both the cash, which had remained legally valid currency despite its age, and the gold, which had appreciated significantly in value since 1991. This unexpected windfall instantly transformed Whispering Pines Ranch from a struggling family operation facing imminent foreclosure into a debt-free enterprise with substantial reserves for infrastructure improvement and operational expansion. The resolution also included full legal clearance for our family, with thorough investigation confirming that no current family members had any knowledge of or involvement in Michael's criminal activities. My grandfather Robert, now 89 years old and living in assisted care, was interviewed extensively by investigators who ultimately concluded that he had been completely unaware of his estranged brother's actions or the valuable secret hidden beneath his ranch for over 3 decades. Beyond the immediate financial impact, the discovery created another unexpected benefit through the national media attention it attracted. The story of a struggling multi-generational ranch saved by the discovery of a long-forgotten criminal cache captured public imagination, resulting in feature articles in major publications and television news segments that highlighted both the dramatic discovery and the sustainable ranching practices we had been developing for decades. This publicity dramatically increased interest in our guest ranch operations and direct market beef sales, creating waiting lists for both experiences and products that would ensure stable revenue streams for years to come. The combination of debt elimination, capital reserves, and enhanced market demand created a financial foundation that would secure Whispering Pines Ranch for at least another generation. We invested a portion of the recovery funds in establishing the Thomas Blackwood Foundation, providing scholarships and grants for young ranchers developing innovative approaches to sustainable agriculture throughout the American West. The foundation ensures that Thomas's legacy extends beyond our family to support other determined individuals who share his vision of creating lasting value through hard work, innovation, and environmental responsibility. Thomas's quarry was restored using the finest stone craftsmen available, incorporating modern engineering techniques with traditional methods that preserved his original design while ensuring structural integrity for another century of service. The restored quarry became the centerpiece of our expanded educational programs, demonstrating how innovative engineering and patient determination can create infrastructure that serves multiple generations. The discovery also enabled us to expand Whispering Pines Ranch's conservation programs, purchasing adjacent wilderness properties that ensure permanent protection for critical wildlife habitat and watershed areas. Our expanded conservation holdings now encompass over 1,500 acres of pristine Montana environment that will remain protected in perpetuity through conservation easements and sustainable management practices. As I stand beside the restored quarry today, watching visitors learn about sustainable water management and traditional stone construction techniques, I understand that Thomas's greatest gift to our family wasn't the accidental treasure that his quarry protected for 3 decades, but the example he provided of what becomes possible when someone refuses to accept limitations and commits completely to building something meaningful and lasting. The $50 million discovery saved Whispering Pines Ranch from financial ruin. But Thomas's real legacy was the persistence, innovation, and long-term thinking that enabled our family to survive every challenge and continue building upon the foundation he established with nothing but $17 and unshakable determination to succeed in the Montana wilderness. Whispering Pines Ranch's story proves that the most valuable discoveries often come not from searching for treasure, but from building something worth preserving and having the courage to dig deeper when circumstances demand extraordinary solutions. Sometimes salvation lies hidden beneath our feet, waiting patiently for the moment when we become desperate enough to look beyond the surface and discover the gifts that history has been protecting for our benefit. Thomas's quarry kept its promise, providing resilience and abundance for 4 generations of our family, while protecting secrets that would ensure Whispering Pines Ranch could continue its mission of sustainable agriculture and environmental stewardship for generations yet to come. The greatest treasures aren't always gold and currency. Sometimes they're the structures, values, and determination that allow families to create lasting legacies in the landscapes they love. The remarkable discovery in our quarry transformed not just our financial circumstances, but our understanding of purpose and possibility. What began as a desperate attempt to save a dying ranch became a profound lesson in persistence, demonstrating that even in our darkest moments, solutions may exist if we're willing to look deeper than anyone has looked before. Today, Whispering Pines Ranch stands as testament to the power of multi-generational vision and the unexpected ways that our actions can create ripples through time. Thomas could never have imagined that his carefully engineered quarry would one day protect a fortune that would save his family's legacy. Yet his commitment to building something that would last beyond his own lifetime created the perfect conditions for that remarkable outcome. Perhaps the most meaningful lesson from our extraordinary experience is that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or gold bars, but in the resilience, knowledge, and values that pass from one generation to the next. While the financial windfall saved our ranch in a moment of crisis, it's the continued application of Thomas's principles, determination, innovation, and forward thinking that will ensure Whispering Pines Ranch continues to thrive for generations to come. Our story isn't just about finding money. It's about discovering that sometimes the answers we need most desperately are hidden in the places we least expect to find them, protected by the very foundations that previous generations built with their vision, sweat, and unshakable belief in the future. And that might be the most valuable treasure of all. The profound impact of our quarry discovery extended far beyond the immediate financial salvation of Whispering Pines Ranch. As news of the remarkable find spread through national media, our story became a powerful symbol of perseverance, intergenerational legacy, and the unexpected ways that history can suddenly intersect with the present. What began as a desperate attempt to save our family ranch transformed into something much larger, a catalyst for community renewal and a chance to honor Thomas's vision in ways he could never have imagined. 6 months after the discovery, Whispering Pines Ranch had undergone a remarkable transformation. The foreclosure notices that once dominated our kitchen table had been replaced by architectural drawings for sustainable ranch improvements and expansion plans that would secure our operations for another century. With our immediate financial concerns resolved, we could finally focus on the long-term vision that had guided our family since 1926, building something meaningful that would serve future generations while honoring the land that had sustained us. Our first major investment focused on comprehensive water management systems that went far beyond simply repairing Thomas's quarry. Working with Montana's leading hydrological engineers, we developed an integrated approach that combined traditional stone construction with modern technology to create a drought-resistant infrastructure throughout our expanded property. The restored quarry remained the centerpiece, but we added satellite reservoirs, solar-powered distribution systems, and sophisticated monitoring equipment that would prevent future water crises regardless of changing climate conditions. Rather than simply enjoying our unexpected wealth, we established the Blackwood Rural Preservation Initiative, dedicating $5 million to helping other multi-generational ranches facing similar financial challenges throughout Montana's hard-hit rural communities. The initiative provided emergency funding for critical infrastructure repairs, professional consultation for sustainable operations, and legal assistance for families navigating complex inheritance and tax issues that threatened their continued land ownership. What happened to us was extraordinary, I explained to a reporter from the Montana Agricultural Journal. But the challenges facing family ranches are universal. We believe Thomas would have wanted his legacy to support the broader community that had supported our family through 9 decades of challenges. This isn't charity, it's an investment in the future of rural Montana and the continuation of sustainable ranching practices that might otherwise be lost to corporate consolidation. The initiative quickly gained momentum, attracting additional funding from conservation organizations and state agricultural programs that recognized the environmental and cultural importance of maintaining family-scale ranching operations. Within its first year, the program had helped stabilize 16 at-risk family ranches, preserving over 22,000 acres of working agricultural land that might otherwise have been sold for development or absorbed into industrial-scale operations. Beyond financial assistance, the initiative created networking and knowledge-sharing opportunities that reconnected isolated ranching families with each other and with emerging sustainable agricultural practices. Quarterly workshops hosted at Whispering Pines Ranch brought together multi-generational ranching families, agricultural researchers, and conservation experts to develop practical solutions for the complex challenges facing modern ranch operations. The money from the discovery saved our ranch in a moment of crisis, I often told these gatherings. But it's the knowledge, determination, and community support that will sustain us for the next century. Thomas didn't succeed because he had financial resources. He succeeded because he had unshakable determination and the willingness to learn from both tradition and innovation. That's the real treasure we're trying to preserve and share. The educational potential of our remarkable Story led to the creation of the Whispering Pines Ranch Learning Center, a facility dedicated to documenting and teaching traditional ranching skills, sustainable agricultural practices, and the history of family ranching in the American West. The center included hands-on workshops in stone construction, water management, animal husbandry, and other essential skills that had sustained ranching families for generations, but were rapidly disappearing in an era of mechanization and corporate agriculture. Some people called what happened to us a miracle or just blind luck, I told the first group of young ranchers who visited the center, but I see it differently. Thomas built that quarry with the specific intention of creating something that would benefit future generations. He couldn't have known how it would eventually save us, but he understood that building with quality and purpose creates possibilities that extend far beyond what we can imagine in the moment. That's the approach. To ranching, we're trying to teach here building operations that can withstand challenges we can't yet anticipate. The Learning Center quickly became a regional resource for agricultural education, attracting not just established ranching families but aspiring first-generation farmers, conservation students, and urban residents seeking connections with traditional agricultural practices. The programs combine practical skills development with broader perspectives on sustainable land management, creating educational experiences that bridge the growing divide between rural and urban communities. Perhaps the most meaningful outcome of our discovery was the opportunity to preserve and share Thomas's original journals, which had been carefully maintained by each generation but never publicly available. These handwritten accounts documented not just the physical development of Whispering Pines Ranch, but the philosophical approach that had guided Thomas through seemingly impossible challenges. The journals revealed a man whose vision extended far beyond his own lifetime, someone who understood that building for future generations required different priorities than simply maximizing short-term gains. I do not build this quarry merely for water storage, though that remains its primary purpose. Thomas wrote in 1929, I build it as a statement of permanence and commitment to this land. Each stone represents my belief that what we create here will outlast not just my own life, but the lives of children not yet born. In an uncertain world, such solid foundations provide both practical utility and spiritual reassurance that our efforts have meaning beyond immediate necessity. These words seemed almost prophetic given how the quarry had eventually saved the ranch, and they resonated deeply with visitors struggling to maintain their own multi-generational operations. In an era of increasing uncertainty, we created carefully preserved reproductions of the journals that became central to the Learning Center's curriculum, providing both practical construction details and philosophical guidance that remains surprisingly relevant despite the passage of nearly a century. The Madison County Bank robbery connection brought unexpected benefits beyond the financial recovery. As investigators completed their work, we were granted permission to create an educational exhibit documenting both the original crime and the remarkable discovery. The exhibit included the restored armored transport, emptied of valuables, but preserved in its discovered condition, Michael's journals with sensitive information redacted, and interactive displays explaining how the vehicle had remained hidden for so many decades. Rather than attempting to conceal this complicated chapter of our family history, we chose to incorporate it into the broader narrative of Whispering Pines Ranch, acknowledging the complexity of human behavior while emphasizing the ultimate resolution that transformed a criminal act into community benefit. The exhibit attracted visitors from throughout the region, including retired law enforcement officers who had participated in the original investigation and had spent decades wondering about the missing armored car. I spent 3 years of my career searching for this vehicle, former Sheriff William Jenkins told me during his visit to the exhibit. Never once did I imagine it was sitting at the bottom of a ranch quarry less than 40 miles from our office. Your great-uncle was either a criminal genius or incredibly lucky, probably both. But there's a certain justice in how this all turned out. with the recovered assets now supporting the kind of community values he rejected when he chose his criminal path. The most personal impact of the discovery came through reconnecting with family history that had been partially lost through the generations. The investigation into Michael's activities led us to discover relatives we hadn't known existed, descendants of cousins who had lost touch with the main family line decades earlier. These newfound family members brought photographs, stories, and perspectives that filled important gaps in our understanding of Thomas's era and the early development of Whispering Pines Ranch. One particular discovery proved especially meaningful: a collection of letters between Thomas and his younger brother James, who had moved to Oregon in 1930. These letters revealed that Thomas had actually consulted with James about the quarry design, incorporating suggestions that improved water filtration and structural stability. This collaborative approach contrasted sharply with the family conflict that had later developed between Robert and Michael, suggesting that the ranch's early success had been built on cooperation rather than competition. The quarry stands completed, and your suggestions regarding the stepped wall design have proven themselves entirely correct. Thomas wrote to James in 1931, "The water remains clearer, the structure more stable, and the access much improved for both humans and livestock. I regret that distance prevents you from seeing the finished work, but please know that your contributions remain visible in every aspect of its construction. This ranch may bear my name in legal documents, but its success belongs equally to your insight and encouragement." These letters helped us understand that Thomas had never intended Whispering Pines Ranch to divide the family, but rather to unite it through shared purpose and achievement. The bitter conflict that later developed between Robert and Michael represented a departure from Thomas's original vision, a breakdown in family unity that had ultimately led to Michael's criminal path and the strange circumstances that would eventually save the ranch nearly a century later. This revelation inspired us to establish an annual Blackwood family reunion, bringing together scattered branches of the family from throughout the United States to reconnect with their shared heritage and the ranch that still bore their name. The first reunion in June 2024 brought together 67 descendants of Thomas and Sarah, many of whom had never met before, but discovered shared physical characteristics, personality traits, and values that had somehow persisted through multiple generations and geographical separation. Looking around this gathering, I see Thomas's determination in dozens of different faces, I told the assembled family. I see Sarah's intelligence and organizational skills, Robert's practical innovation, and all the other qualities that have defined our family for nearly a century. The ranch may currently belong legally to my immediate family, but its legacy and meaning belong to everyone who carries the Blackwood heritage, regardless of current name or location. This broader understanding of family helped heal some of the lingering questions about Michael's betrayal and criminal activities. Rather than seeing him simply as the bad Blackwood who had rejected family values, we came to understand him as someone who had lost connection with the supportive family network that had sustained others through difficult times. His isolation had made him vulnerable to negative influences and resentments that might have been resolved differently had family relationships remained stronger. Michael's story isn't just about criminal behavior, I explained during a Learning Center presentation on family ranching dynamics. It's about what happens when we lose sight of the collaborative vision that successful family operations require. Thomas built this ranch through cooperation and shared purpose. When later generations shifted toward competition and exclusion, they created vulnerabilities that eventually threatened everything the family had built. The lesson isn't just about honest versus dishonest choices. It's about maintaining the family connections that help everyone make better decisions during difficult times. This perspective transformed our approach to current ranch management and future succession planning. Rather than focusing narrowly on maintaining control within the immediate family line, we developed a more inclusive governance structure that incorporated extended family members, longtime employees, and community representatives. The Whispering Pines Ranch Trust was established to ensure that the operation would continue serving its broader purpose regardless of which individuals held direct management authority in future generations. The Trust's founding document explicitly acknowledged both Thomas's original vision and the complicated journey that had preserved it. This ranch exists not merely as an agricultural operation or family asset, but as a living demonstration of multi-generational commitment to land stewardship, sustainable practices, and community benefit. Its remarkable history, including both achievements and failures, serves as continuing education in the importance of building operations that can withstand challenges we cannot yet imagine. The Trust is established to ensure that these lessons remain accessible to future generations regardless of direct family ownership or management. 2 years after the discovery, Whispering Pines Ranch has been transformed from a struggling operation on the verge of foreclosure into a thriving enterprise that combines productive agriculture, educational programs, and community service. Our cattle operation has expanded to include heritage breeds particularly suited to changing climate conditions. Our guest facilities have been upgraded to accommodate increased demand while maintaining authentic ranch experiences. Our conservation programs have expanded to include collaborative research with universities studying sustainable grazing practices and drought resilience. But beyond these operational improvements, the most significant transformation has been in how we understand our purpose and responsibility. The Quarry discovery revealed that we weren't just managing a business or maintaining a family tradition. We were continuing a legacy of innovation, determination, and forward thinking that had implications far beyond our property boundaries. Thomas hadn't just built a ranch. He had established a demonstration of what becomes possible when someone refuses to accept limitations and commits to creating something meaningful that will outlast their own lifetime. Standing beside the restored quarry today, watching young ranchers learn traditional stone construction techniques that have suddenly become relevant again in an era of climate uncertainty, I understand that Thomas's real gift wasn't the accidental treasure that saved us from financial ruin. It was the example he provided of building with such quality and purpose that your work creates possibilities you could never anticipate. The armored transport hidden beneath our quarry for 30 years provided the financial resources to save Whispering Pines Ranch at a critical moment. But Thomas's vision, determination, and craftsmanship created the perfect hiding place that preserved those resources until the moment they were most needed. That's the true treasure we've discovered. Understanding that when we build something with integrity and purpose, we create foundations that can support future generations in ways we could never imagine. Whispering Pines Ranch's remarkable story continues to attract visitors from throughout the country, many seeking inspiration for their own family challenges or connection with traditional skills that have renewed relevance in uncertain times. I often end tours at the Quarry Overlook, where Thomas's original stonework seamlessly merges with our modern restoration, creating a physical representation of how past and present can strengthen each other when approached with respect and common purpose. The money we found solved our immediate crisis, I tell these visitors. But the real discovery was understanding that previous generations had already provided everything we needed to succeed if we were willing to look deeply enough at what they had built and learn the lessons embedded in their work. Thomas couldn't have known how his quarry would eventually save the ranch, but he built it with such care and foresight that it could serve purposes beyond his imagination. That's the approach to life and work that represents our true family inheritance. As we move forward, the lessons of our extraordinary discovery continue to guide every aspect of ranch operations and family decisions. We build for future generations rather than immediate gain. We value quality and durability over expedience. We recognize that true security comes not from financial resources alone, but from creating systems and relationships that can adapt to unexpected challenges. Most importantly, we understand that our most meaningful achievements may benefit people we will never meet in ways we cannot currently imagine. The quarry that Thomas built with such determination and sacrifice continues serving Whispering Pines Ranch, not just as a water storage system, but as a daily reminder that our most important work often lies beyond the horizon of our own lives. The treasure it protected for 30 years saved our family legacy at a critical moment. But the example of forward-thinking stewardship it represents remains our most valuable inheritance, one that no financial crisis or unexpected discovery could ever diminish. What began as a private family salvation gradually transformed into a regional phenomenon that challenged conventional thinking about rural sustainability, historical preservation, and community resilience. As we approach the third anniversary of that desperate winter when we drained Thomas's quarry, Whispering Pines Ranch had evolved from a single family struggle into a vibrant hub of innovation that was influencing agricultural practices throughout the Northern Rockies. The most meaningful development came through our partnership with Montana State University's Sustainable Agriculture Program, which established a permanent research station at Whispering Pines Ranch focused on drought-resistant ranching techniques. The Thomas Blackwood Field Laboratory brought academic researchers, agricultural scientists, and working ranchers together to develop practical solutions for the increasingly unpredictable climate conditions affecting Montana's agricultural communities. What makes this partnership unique is the integration of historical knowledge with cutting-edge science, explained Dr. Rebecca Thornton, the program's director, during the facility's dedication ceremony. The quarry that Thomas built nearly a century ago demonstrates principles of water conservation and storage that remain relevant today, while our modern monitoring systems and computer modeling allow us to understand those principles with unprecedented precision. Together, they create agricultural solutions that neither approach could develop independently. The research station's first major project focused on documenting and analyzing the complex water filtration system Thomas had incorporated into his quarry design. Using ground-penetrating radar and hydrological testing equipment, researchers discovered that the seemingly simple stone arrangements created a sophisticated, natural purification system that removed sediment, reduced bacterial contamination, and maintained consistent water quality regardless of source conditions. What's remarkable is that Thomas developed this system through observation and trial-and-error experimentation, without any formal scientific training, noted Dr. James Rodriguez, the university's leading hydrologist. Yet when we analyze his design using modern scientific methods, we find that he intuitively understood principles of fluid dynamics, filtration mechanisms, and biological purification that weren't formally documented until decades later. His practical knowledge, developed through necessity and careful observation, anticipated scientific discoveries that would follow much later. This revelation transformed our understanding of traditional ranching knowledge, which had often been dismissed as merely folk wisdom lacking scientific validity. The Quarry project demonstrated that generations of practical experience had created sophisticated understanding that complemented rather than contradicted modern scientific approaches. This integrated perspective became the foundation for the research station's broader mission, developing agricultural techniques that combine traditional knowledge with contemporary science to create resilient systems capable of withstanding 21st century challenges. The practical applications emerged quickly. By studying Thomas's quarry design, researchers developed scaled versions that individual ranchers could implement without massive investment or specialized equipment. These micro-quarries incorporated the same filtration principles and structural elements that had made Thomas's original creation so effective, but could be constructed in a matter of weeks rather than years, and at a fraction of the cost. We've installed 15 demonstration microquarries throughout central Montana, I explained during a regional agricultural conference. Early results show 40% greater water retention during drought conditions and 60% improved water quality compared to conventional storage systems. Most importantly, they can be built using local materials and basic equipment that most ranchers already possess. Thomas would have appreciated that practical approach, making sophisticated technology accessible to working people with limited resources. The microquarry program quickly expanded beyond Montana, with demonstration projects established in Wyoming, Idaho, and the Dakotas. Each installation was adapted to local conditions and materials while maintaining the core principles of Thomas's original design. The program's success attracted attention from agricultural organizations throughout the drought-affected American West, creating unexpected demand for training programs that could help ranchers implement similar systems on their own properties. This demand led to the creation of the Blackwood Water Management Institute, a nonprofit training center that brought ranchers from throughout the region to Whispering Pines Ranch for intensive workshops on sustainable water systems. The institute combined classroom instruction with hands-on construction experience, allowing participants to develop practical skills while understanding the scientific principles behind each technique. Most importantly, the program was structured to ensure that participants could implement what they learned without expensive equipment or outside expertise. What we're really teaching is self-reliance and adaptive thinking, I told a journalist from National Geographic who was documenting the program. Thomas didn't succeed because he had access to special resources or knowledge that others lacked. He succeeded because he approached challenges with creativity, determination, and willingness to learn from both success and failure. Those qualities matter more than any specific technique, especially in an era when conditions are changing faster than formal educational systems can respond. The Institute's impact extended far beyond water management techniques. Participants discovered a supportive community of like-minded ranchers facing similar challenges, creating networks of collaboration that transcended traditional boundaries of competition and isolation. These connections led to equipment sharing, cooperatives, marketing alliances, and knowledge exchange programs that strengthened entire rural communities rather than just individual operations. Before coming here, I felt completely alone in my struggles, admitted Frank Henderson, a third-generation Wyoming rancher who participated in our second workshop. Now I have 20 new colleagues I can call when I'm facing a problem, plus all their different perspectives on potential solutions. That's worth more than any specific technique I learned during the formal training. You can't put a price on knowing you're not fighting these battles alone. The most unexpected development came through our connection with Michael's criminal history and the Madison County Bank robbery. As details of the case became public through media coverage and our educational exhibits, we began receiving communications from individuals with connections to the original crime and investigation. These included former law enforcement officers, bank employees, and even individuals who claimed to have information about Michael's criminal associates. Most significantly, we received a letter from Eleanor Richards, an elderly woman living in a San Francisco nursing home who identified herself as Michael's former partner and claimed to have information about additional assets that had never been recovered. After consulting with FBI officials and our legal team, we arranged to visit Eleanor and record her story, which proved to be the final missing piece in understanding how Thomas's quarry had become the hiding place for stolen assets. According to Eleanor, who had been granted immunity from prosecution due to her advanced age and health conditions, Michael had initially planned to hide the stolen assets in an abandoned mine shaft near Helena. However, during preparatory surveillance, he had discovered that the site was being monitored by federal agents investigating unrelated criminal activity. With no alternative secure location available and law enforcement closing in, Michael had made the desperate decision to use his family's quarry as a temporary hiding place until the investigation subsided. Michael never intended to involve his family or their property, Eleanor explained during our recorded interview. He was actually planning to retrieve the transport within a month and move everything to a permanent location in Canada. But the heat from the investigation was much more intense than he anticipated, and then his arrest on those other charges made it impossible. By the time he was released, he was too ill to attempt recovery, and he wouldn't tell anyone else the location because he was afraid they'd be caught and implicate him. Eleanor also revealed that Michael had maintained a hidden storage unit in Bozeman, containing documentation about the robbery, including detailed maps of alternate hiding locations, contact information for fences who could handle the gold, and records of his criminal associates. With Eleanor's permission and FBI supervision, we located this storage unit and recovered the remaining documentation, providing closure for investigators who had spent decades wondering about the unresolved aspects of the case. The most poignant revelation came through a sealed letter Michael had left, specifically addressed to the current owner of Whispering Pines Ranch, with instructions that it should only be delivered if the transport was ever discovered. The storage facility manager had never known what the letter contained or its significance, so it had remained in the unit untouched for nearly 20 years after Michael's death. The letter, written during Michael's final months as his health was failing, contained a full confession and expression of remorse that provided emotional closure our family hadn't realized we needed. Michael acknowledged the harm his actions had caused while explaining the resentment and disconnection that had led him down a criminal path. Most significantly, he expressed hope that the hidden assets might someday benefit the family ranch if they were ever discovered after legal claims had expired. I know this confession comes too late to repair the damage I've caused or restore the family connections I destroyed through my choices, Michael wrote. But I want whoever reads this to understand that my quarrel was never with the ranch itself or what it represented. Thomas built something meaningful and lasting that deserved to be preserved, even if I couldn't find my own place within it. If by some remarkable circumstance these assets are eventually discovered and can benefit Whispering Pines Ranch, perhaps some small portion of my family legacy can be redeemed through that outcome. This unexpected reconciliation transformed our family's understanding of Michael's story, replacing the simple narrative of criminal betrayal with a more complex recognition of how isolation and unresolved conflict can distort even the strongest family values. Rather than continuing to exclude Michael from our family history, we incorporated his story, both the destructive choices and the final attempt at reconciliation, into the broader narrative of Whispering Pines Ranch. Every family contains both triumph and failure, wisdom and foolishness, creation and destruction, I explained during a presentation at our learning center. What matters isn't eliminating the painful chapters, but learning from them, understanding how disconnection creates vulnerability and how reconciliation remains possible even across generations. Michael's criminal actions threatened our family legacy, but his final gesture of recognition helped preserve it. Both aspects of his story deserve acknowledgement if we're truly committed to understanding our complete history. This integrated perspective attracted unexpected interest from family counselors, community reconciliation specialists, and rural mental health professionals who recognize that many agricultural communities struggle with similar patterns of family conflict, isolation, and unresolved generational tensions. The Blackwood Reconciliation Project emerged from these discussions, creating resources and programs to help divided families address long-standing conflicts before they create permanent ruptures. Rural communities face unique challenges in addressing family conflicts, explained Dr. Margaret Wilson, a psychologist specializing in agricultural community mental health, who helped develop the project. Geographic isolation, economic interdependence, and cultural expectations of self-reliance can make it difficult to access traditional counseling resources or acknowledge emotional struggles. The Blackwood story provides a powerful framework for discussing these issues without stigma, using a narrative that resonates with ranching families while demonstrating both the costs of unresolved conflict and the possibility of healing. The project developed resources specifically designed for agricultural communities, including discussion guides, facilitation training, and support networks that could function effectively despite geographic isolation. Most importantly, the program emphasized that addressing family conflict wasn't a sign of weakness, but a necessary component of maintaining operational sustainability across generations, framing emotional health as an essential agricultural skill rather than an unrelated soft concern. As these various initiatives developed, we realized that the Quarry discovery had created opportunities that extended far beyond financial salvation or historical interest. Whispering Pines Ranch had become a catalyst for regional resilience, bringing together diverse expertise, traditional knowledge, and contemporary science to address challenges that no single approach could solve independently. The isolation that had characterized both Thomas's original homesteading effort and our recent financial crisis had been replaced by interconnection that strengthened both our ranch and the broader community. This transformation was physically embodied in the restored Quarry, which now served simultaneously as a functional water management system, historical exhibit, research laboratory, and training facility. On any given day, the site might host university researchers collecting water samples, traditional stonemasons demonstrating construction techniques, visiting ranchers learning filtration principles, and tourists discovering the remarkable story of the hidden armored transport. Each group brought different perspectives and expertise, creating a continuous exchange of knowledge that benefited everyone involved. Perhaps the most significant outcome was the shift in how we understood sustainability itself. Before the discovery, we had viewed sustainability primarily in environmental and financial terms, maintaining healthy ecosystems and positive cash flow. The Quarry experience revealed a broader definition that included historical knowledge, community connections, family reconciliation, and intergenerational purpose. True sustainability required not just preserving natural resources but maintaining the human systems and relationships that gave those resources meaning and purpose. Thomas didn't build the Quarry simply to store water, I often tell visitors, standing beside the restored structure. He built it to store possibility, creating infrastructure that could support future generations in ways he couldn't specifically anticipate, but fundamentally believed were important. That's the essence of true sustainability, building with such quality and purpose that your work creates opportunities beyond your own imagination or lifetime. This perspective transformed our approach to current challenges, particularly the accelerating climate changes affecting Montana's agricultural communities. Rather than viewing these challenges merely as threats to be survived, we began approaching them as opportunities to demonstrate the same innovative determination that had characterized Thomas's response to the challenges of his era. The micro-quarry program, drought-resistant breeding initiatives, and water conservation systems weren't just defensive measures, but affirmative statements about our commitment to future generations. As Whispering Pines Ranch approaches its centennial anniversary in 2026, we've begun planning a celebration that honors not just our family's persistence, but the broader community that has sustained and been sustained by the ranch throughout its history. The Centennial Project includes an expanded learning center, additional conservation easements, and scholarship programs for young people pursuing innovative approaches to agricultural sustainability. Most significantly, the celebration will formally establish the Whispering Pines Ranch Permanent Trust, ensuring that the property will remain both a working ranch and educational resource, regardless of future ownership changes. standing beside the quarry that Thomas built and Michael inadvertently transformed into our salvation. I'm struck by how a single physical structure can embody such complex and seemingly contradictory narratives, determination and desperation, creation and concealment, division and reconciliation. The quarry represents both our most tangible inheritance from previous generations and our most meaningful responsibility to those who will follow us. Its stones contain not just the practical lessons of water management, but the deeper wisdom of building beyond immediate needs and personal horizons. The armored transport hidden beneath our quarry for 30 years provided the financial resources that saved Whispering Pines Ranch at a critical moment. But Thomas's vision, craftsmanship, and commitment to future generations created the foundation that made both the concealment and discovery possible. That's the true treasure we continue to uncover, understanding that when we build with integrity and purpose, we create possibilities that extend far beyond our own imagination or lifetime. As visitors depart from Whispering Pines Ranch, their last view is typically of the restored quarry, its stone walls blending seamlessly with the surrounding landscape, while water from distant mountain snowfields gathers in its protected basin. The scene represents everything our family has learned through our remarkable journey, that meaningful work transcends time, that challenges often contain hidden opportunities, and that salvation frequently appears in unexpected forms if we're willing to look deeply enough. Thomas couldn't have known that his quarry would one day save the ranch by protecting stolen assets, I tell departing guests. But he built it with such care and vision that it could serve purposes beyond his imagination. That's not just a lesson about construction techniques, it's a lesson about how to live meaningfully in an unpredictable world. When we build with quality, purpose, and concern for future generations, we create foundations that can support possibilities we could never anticipate. And that capacity for creating unexpected opportunity might be the most valuable legacy any of us can leave behind. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.